and welcome back to another episode of Let We Hear From Doc. I'm your host, Amanda Japal, and with me is Dr. the Right Honorable Claudius Mitchell. So, Dr. Mitchell, how are you doing today?
Good.
How was the weekend?
Quiet and rested. And I look forward to our session today and look forward to the special help you have here this morning.
Well, there's a story behind that hairstyle, but I'll tell you.
We'll talk about that later privately and otherwise.
So, Doc, there's this big issue right now. At one point, there was a slogan that said jab in parliament, jab in cabinet, and there was a strong political embrace of jab culture. But now we're hearing it's too early for jab. What do you think has changed? Was jab a genuine cultural stance or just a political movement? And how do we reconcile that shift with the expectations of young people who see jab as part of their identity?
Well, I think it's well known that that the issue of jab is something that Canadian culture has certainly accepted, and people have accepted as part of their own cultural identity. So I think that's accepted. So I don't think anyone want to be seen as being against jab and that aspect of our culture. I think the fundamental issue, as I see it, is when we were in government and COVID was a serious issue, which, of course, involved the lives of all the citizens of the country. And we had countries like the United States and the whole Caribbean. Countries were locked down because of the spread of COVID and how deadly it was, and the protection of the lives of people. So we would have been highly irresponsible as a government when all governments were doing everything they wanted to do to protect their citizens, to not to advise very large gatherings, which of course could lead to the demise of so many citizens. We would have been highly irresponsible. So when this issue of a jab activity came up in St. Patrick's, we advised that it was not wise and that people's lives were at stake. So we advised. We did not dictate anything to anyone, because our question was strong advice. And if I did not do this, I would be held culpable or highly responsible for anything that happened to the citizens of the country. My advice was not heeded, and if you recall, we did not attempt to stop people, because as far as I'm concerned, it is your life and you have a responsibility to protect it. And those of us who advise you should do so. But in the final analysis, what you do about your own life is going to be your responsibility. So they did have this massive jab display in St. Patrick's. I'm not saying that was responsible for this, but we had hundreds of deaths after that particular event and throughout the COVID period in the country, where some people, despite the advice to the contrary, were still going out in groups and having activities and parties and so on. And that was a problem. And what we see today is a prime minister, of course, who clearly don't understand his people, don't understand the culture of the population, because he has never been involved in any national issues before he became prime minister. So he's speaking of the cuff without an understanding of the mindset of the people, and of course the culture that he was born into without understanding it. And I think that is clearly the problem. So I think the backlash is coming because his party was vehemently in support. Have your fet to forget the government, don't listen to them, which was again highly irresponsible because people's lives were involved. So in the face of this, whatever advice is given, right or wrong, is going to be seen in that context of what his party, which he's now leading, did when when they were being advised to not to do such activity because of the implication for your life. And there was nothing now about the implication for life. About and therefore it was seen as a dictate now, as a policy that you should not be doing it. And I think that is why the reaction is so strong. And maybe he might be even surprised, but I am not surprised at the reaction that he's getting about this. So that is my own take on this. I am not going to be commenting on what he said, rightfully or wrongfully. That's not the issue. The issue is about the what is perceived to be the contradiction of the party's position several years ago when life was involved, and the position now of the same persons who wanted to do their own thing as far as the jab display is concerned. I think that's the issue.
That that statement actually brought me back to a time when we couldn't even play music for our own independence celebrations. So how do you reflect on the contrast between your approach and the leadership that we've seen today?
No, I think it has a lot to do. Amanda, remember, I grew up in a community, and I was all over the country. It must be always remembered that I was a national cricketer, and of course, national captain, and played Rhode Island cricket. So all over the country. So whatever little hole existed in Grenada, whatever, I've been through all of them. I've done this, I've done that. So I knew the people well. Of course, being involved in teaching and academic work. I've been involved at different levels in the society. I've been involved in business also. So I have a rich history of relationship at all levels in the society. So, and having been to the United States, and I saw a lot of things there. I watched the politics of the United States in the United States, and of course was consistently involved in what was taking place in the country. So my experience is broad. So the kind of mistakes that are being made now by someone who never had any serious interaction has a lot to do with his lack of previous activities in the society. And I think that could be put to that, but that's no excuse for doing things and making statements which do not necessarily show that you understand the people or whom you're supposed to be leading. And it is a fact. There is a level of arrogance being displayed, because even if you want to tell somebody, advise them, it's not the best. It's how you say it, how you come off, right? It would give certain reaction, or you get a certain response mechanism. So you're coming down and talking to people as if we are all your children, and you're telling us that you know what is best for us, and so on, and what we should not be doing at a given time, without an understanding of how you say it and when you say it. It is a fundamental problem, and I think that's what you see happening all over the country, and I'm not surprised at the backlash. I'm not surprised, because even when I advise people about their own life, I was not even surprised at the backlash, but I knew I was doing what was right. And if I had not done it, I would have been held accountable for any serious issues that were related to people's lives.
Yeah, it feels right now that like you mentioned dictator, and it feels right now that we're on the dictatorship style leadership, where decisions are simply made without public consultation. That reminded me not only these incidents, but it reminded me of that union incident as well. So you see, there is a link between all of this.
Well, I wanted to make the point that whether or not it is seen as dictatorial by some persons or not, I think it has a lot to the same point I was just making. The gentleman or the brother does not understand the society that he's leading in. Is leading, and he's not taking time because he feels he is the boss. He is the prime minister, and he is bigger than everybody else in the country, which is a very stupid approach to dealing with human beings. And therefore, he's talking down to everybody and making these statements that without a clear understanding of the implication of the statements. And I think that is fundamental. It's a lack of understanding of the society. And as I make the distinction, some people may call it dictatorial, some people may say it's a lot of ignorance. And whatever it is, the fact is, it's a certain fundamental weakness that I'm sure that he can correct. Because if you don't understand the society, if you don't understand what you're doing, if you don't understand the people you're working with, it's very difficult. No matter, and if especially if you have the perception that you are the boss and you should not be taking advice from anybody, then it becomes worse. I always felt, when I became leader of the NNP, I always felt that time I never made a serious decision without talking to some of the old stalwarts who were there before. Although I was much younger than they are, and of course I had the academic and other strengths behind me, and of course my contact with the society was through sports. But I always felt I always needed more advice, so I sought advice from all and sundry, because I never felt. But I think it comes to if you are confident in yourself and you're secure and you know your strengths and you know you're not perfect because you are not God, then of course you want everybody around you to offer advice. And sometimes the best advice you get does not come from some intellectual, some professor, or some brilliant-minded person academically. Sometimes the fellow in the street, the fisherman, he gains experience at his level, understand? So he comes up with advice which would be clinical for you as in your position. So you have to listen to all those advice. I'm saying you're going to take all of them, but you listen. You listen to the guy who works in the streets. He meets all level of persons on the ground, so to speak. So you have to have all that, but you have to be secured and confident in you, and treat everybody as also equal, because you're just first among equals. That's what you are. And in any event, remember, one day you will not be there. And the problem therefore becomes, when you're not there, just remember the people will still be there. And therefore, they might not treat you as probably you should expect to be treated as a former leader of the country. And I always tell people, I've been in opposition before, and I've been in government several times. And no one could ever say, when I'm in opposition, I'm in government, I behave differently. And that to me is a lack of understanding of the people that you grew up with and having rooted in the community and in the country that you are supposed to be working with and working in, so to speak. So I think this is what I could say is a fundamental problem that the present leader faces. And sometimes I have a lot of empathy for him. I feel sorry for him because I think he is living in a vacuum, not understanding understanding what is taking place on the ground. Because the ground has been shifted away from him and he doesn't have a clue what's going on.
Well, I've been laughing because, well, he thinks he's baby Jesus, eh?
Well,
So,
but even baby Jesus is to listen, Jesus is to listen. The Bible tells us that.
but Doc, you were often criticized, but people still felt heard. I mean, you touched a little bit on that a while ago. But what did you do differently that allowed Grenadians to feel part of the process, even in the disagreements?
But because clearly, Amanda, I think as I said, I understood that people would not always agree with you. Because first of all, you're not perfect. And I understand that people have different views. And there's some people just will not like you. That's life. And if you accept those fundamental premises, then you should also be ready to accept, not necessarily agree, but understand the views of others and not appear to be too upset when people express views contradictory or opposed to what you're saying. I think that is a fundamental position that all persons in leadership, and it doesn't have to be just politics. If you're in a business, you have to understand the environment, the people you're serving, and you have to understand those staff around you at all levels that work with you. And if you don't treat them right and don't listen to them, you'll make a lot of fundamental mistakes. So that I think is what I'm saying to you is that I had a good, and I still made mistakes, and that's life. And therefore, you have to come to terms with the position that you have and the responsibility that you have, and recognize that not everyone would want to follow you in most of the decisions that you take, and that it's okay to have people differing. In fact, in a multi-party democracy, the parliamentary system that we work with, it is an accepted thing that sometimes differences of opinion is sometimes extremely important for the persons that are making decisions, because sometimes the people around you fail to tell you what some of them want to tell you for different reasons, or for fear that you may take it negatively and act against them. But that's why it's important that the opposition forces in the country who don't have that fear must also be listened to, because sometimes you don't even have to admit it, but sometimes they say something that could be beneficial for you to change some of the actions and even gain popular support, more support among the population. So I think I'm saying all to say that's how I operated. And in some of the most vicious period of opposition, I think I mentioned that before, the issue of importation of stores in the country. And I got that nickname for it. And everywhere I went, I was getting the nickname. It was not easy, but I came to terms that that's what the life was all about. You have to come to terms that when you make decisions, that you can sometimes find vehement opposition, even from your own supporters. And it's how you handle it will determine how you keep their support, or you gain additional support. And I think our history in the New National Party has demonstrated that we faced those on several occasions. We had mass demonstrations from trade unions, but we never took high-handed actions against any one of them. And none of them could accuse me of being violent or encouraging violent actions against demonstrators or personnel, because my history has been one of peace and order. While I am clearly someone have strong views, and I would not be afraid to express them in opposition to anyone in the society if I feel strongly about a particular issue. And I hope they will accept my views the same way I accepted theirs. That has not always been the case, but I understand it, and therefore I work with it.
So, Doc, we have seen an electoral officer in Carriacou openly engaging in political activities. The supervisor of elections, under the guidance of the Governor General, has refused to dismiss this officer. What are your views on this issue?
Well, first of all, the Governor General could only be in a position of authority as Governor General. The Prime Minister of the country so want that person to be there. One of the easiest positions in a country to change is the position of Governor General. One Prime Minister told me once, see, Keith, I have just made one call to Westminster, to the Queen, and 3 days later, Governor General was changed. So the Governor General could only be acting with the acquiescence of the Prime Minister of the country on certain important image decision of the country. So it has to be clear that the Governor General has been facing an issue of this nature. If I was in a position of Prime Minister, the Governor General would have been spoken to and advised that person, because it's clearly a political action. And the Governor General is not supposed to be somebody's acting on behalf of any political organization or being perceived, even not necessarily intentionally, but being perceived to be. The minute that person goes into a serious party activity and wearing jerseys and demonstrating partiality, they cannot be in a position of returning office or registration office, and they must have been moved promptly. And I think that is so obvious. So the Governor General is certainly making herself look very bad for not acting and talking about giving a warning notice. There's no warning in this. The warning is that you must demit that position, and somebody else has to be accepted in the position as registration officer, and by implication, election time, returning officer. Otherwise, the situation, they think the whole process, electoral process, and that particular is tainted. And who's responsible for that is those who govern in the country.
We have not seen any new plans and programs from this government. As a matter of fact, all of the NMP programs, they were butchered and repackaged without anything innovative. Do you think that this government is suffering from a lack of ideas?
Well, I think what I can say is that it appears that the team that came, that is now in office, I think most of them, and I can't say all, most of them seem to have got into the politics or ran for office, and by so doing have won, where the people wanted change. Seem to have one thing in mind: power for themselves, an opportunity to live nice. That is clear from their actions. In other words, I don't think any serious thought was given to what will happen to the country, what will we do to help improve the lives of people. It was about what will I do to improve myself. And I see all the actions are taken, from the captain down to cook. As I said, I can't say all in the middle row there acting the same way. But it's clear to people that there was nothing about priority, about getting government going and taking decisions and policy or positions that can improve the economic life of the people of the country. So all of the activities that we had in place, whether it's road projects, whether it's hospital activity, no matter what they are, it's just, as you say, repackaged, and in some cases just followed badly and implemented badly, so they're wasting a lot of money on a particular project that could have been finished a long time ago, and not all that money spent. They are just totally mismanaging every aspect of governance and with no thought of any future. And the big thing is about a new hospital. Now, what's a new hospital? A new building, new equipment, new what? And then paying millions of US dollars for service of a particular organization in a country where the healthcare system is still being one of the serious debate among political organizations in that country. So there's no instant solution having any organization. It's about the people. And that's why the involvement of the people at all levels, the training of your staff, the training of more medical personnel, the training of orderlies. And I don't mean training just knowledge and skills. They're talking about attitudinal changes and all the stuff required, the nurses, support services and so on, incentive to make sure people can work and even produce more. All this should be part of a package that going forward. So just telling me that this institution from abroad is coming as if they have some miraculous solution for the health of the country, it's ridiculous. That's unfortunately foolish to talk about, because it's just not the case. And also the question of a new building. A new building. They must just go take a page and go to Cuba. Go to Cuba. Cuba is identified as a country in the world that has the best system of healthcare services for the entire population. I'm not talking about one sector of the population. And if you go there, you'll see. What you'll learn is that it's not a building. It's a system that in place. Sometimes it's a little tent there, but they have the equipment there, they have the trained nurses, they have the support staff, they have the communication system in place, and the attitudinal, attitudes of the staff, of welcoming visitors, welcoming patients, welcoming people. And you know this about people tell you if you were sick before. A lot of times you go to a hospital, it's not about the skills of the patient, of the medical personnel. They're very important, and the advice given. But you know, the most significant part about healthcare is how people treat you, how they speak to you, and so on.
Service.
And so on. Because when I was young, and they tell me I had to go to a doctor. When I go there, sometimes that really happened to me. I had to go there. I'm trembling because I fear you can tell me some bad thing of me. But when the doctor just tells me, sometimes he do no big investigation, but he says to me, "Man, doc, you're healthy, man, you're good." But all of a sudden, I become perfect. And I'm sure that's the case in almost everybody. So the human touch of the people giving services at in any medical facility is the most crucial aspect. Not the building and even the equipment. All these are important, but they're not the key factor. It's attitudinal approach of the person serving in that particular institution.
I'm glad you mentioned the hospital because so far there are no tangible plans for the hospital project, but a mere announcement. However, we see a call to raise money through philanthropic means. What are your views on this?
Well, that clearly would work. I mean, it's almost a joke. I mean, all this. Let me tell you something. This NDC seem to have a problem, a specific thing about new hospitals, because there was another NDC government, I think it was 2000 and maybe 2008, a period when they won, that had big plans. They had a big nice drawing about a new hospital, and it was put up on where the police giving signal up in St. George's. There, you come from the market and you're going up to the carriage, where the police giving signal, a big placard on the poster, massive poster up there with a plan, man. It looked like you're in heaven when you go there. That's how the building looked. That was the end of it. A new hospital coming. New hospital coming again. New hospital, 400 million. Where are you getting this? Who's paying for this? Where are you going to get that money? And look at the services. You don't even have medication at the hospital. Basic medication. Almost all of us suffer with some form of chronic disease, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's sugar. Basic stuff. You go to the hospital, you can't get any service. Even the question of a blood test is a problem. And I'm not saying it was perfect in any other government, even in NMP time, but NMP never attempted to build a hospital for $3 and $4 million. Why? While they don't have medication in the hospital. So I think it's just a fallacy, this idea. And again, it's because you don't know people. So you feel, oh, Grenadian going to jump and vote for you again because you're bringing a new hospital. Nonsense. If you think that's what people going to vote for, you better start showing a difference in governance and showing people you care, you love them, and you have empathy and you understand the problems that poor people suffer in the country. The cost of living in the country is going up every day, and the people can't buy basic services. They can't even feed their people, their family. And that's what you have to talk about when you talk about new hospitals. So they must forget all that, all the pain, all the basic services you're not delivering, and the lack of contact and thing with people. And they'll vote for a building and the new some pie in the sky hospital coming. Yeah, new hospital, bring it.
You mentioned cost of living, and that remains a major concern to the Grenadian people. And the most recent consumer price index of February 2025, it went up relative to February 2024. Do you think that the government is even concerned about this?
Well, I just make the point. I don't think they have shown any interest in the problems that the people are facing. And as I mentioned, whether it's the fact that they don't have a job and they have no hope, the fact that their basic services are being denied from them, right? All the other things and issues just raised, all these are factors. The cost of things going up every day. They have not shown, you've never had a statement from any one of them. And I would assume that the leadership should be the one for leading in this exercise about the pain the people are going through. And when we had problems less than this of prices going up in the country and during a particular period, we summoned the social partners and we came up with a plan of action. We took certain initiative, reducing VAT on certain commodities, services that we had, and to show that at least we understand. We know it was also eaten into the revenue of government. But government has to make sacrifices when people are hurting. And the more people are hurting, the more sacrifices government is expected to make. So we took initiative and we spoke to it. And we did a lot of things that will help many of the programs that are reduced now. Remember all these youth vibes and all the stuff we had, Men on the Block, that we had the initiative from the Ministry of Youth, Sister Kate and Sister Evelyn Pear were in the early days of representation ministerial work. We're working on reaching out to the young boys in the block. Many of them, you go some places you're driving through, and you see massive people together next in the gambling. You know what I mean? Are we happy with this? A young man that could be they're working in the middle of the day, sit down in blocks gambling. You know, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be enjoying the fun of playing games, whether it's dominoes, cards. But in the middle of the day, that's a clear demonstration of a serious social problem that has to be confronted by those in authority to lead. And I think that's a fundamental issue we're not seeing at all.
The social partners were a key feature of your administration for almost 10 years. Do you still see the need for this group?
Well, there's always been need for social partners because as I enjoyed the entire piece what we're talking about today, I talk about the human touch. I mean, if you're going to be governing people, the broader the consultative or setup you have, the better for you. So when we initiated the concept of monthly meetings of the social partners, the business community was represented, and not one sector of the business community. Hotels were there, the General Chamber of Commerce was there, the trade union was there, the NGO community was there, and the government clearly was also there. And we invited members of the opposition, and sometimes when we had meetings. So we had a collective group of persons who had an opportunity to express their views. So we got a broader, not that everything that was decided did in fact was implemented. We're not perfect. But we did attempt to reach people, and there would always be need. Any government that refuses to have a setup like this is hurting itself. It is not helping itself. And what you want to be as successful as possible. But if you have an ego that you feel you know it all, and you're bigger than everybody else, and everybody else is little children of yours, then of course you don't want to meet with anybody. You want to sit down by yourself in wherever you're in comfort zone and make decisions and just hand it down. Just announce it, man. Just announce that you're bringing new hospital. Just announce that you're doing this. Just announce that you should not be playing jab. Just announce that you should. Just keep making announcement, man. Because you're big and bad, you know what I mean? And unfortunately, that is the medicine for disaster. And there is a political disaster coming for the National Democratic Congress.
Well, Doc, we're about to wrap up. We've seen the emergence of multiple political parties right here in our Tri-Island state. What does this shift mean for Grenada's political landscape?
Well, I don't know. There are multiple announcements, but I don't know. A political party is not just the announcement of an individual. We have had that before. This is not the first time, and they're young, but way back, we have had several political organizations. They formed and they deformed. Not long afterward, if there's anything called a word deformed, unformed, or whatever they are.
Dissolved.
Not dissolved. That's a nice word. That's English word. That's the vocabulary. Yeah, that's the word you should use. So I take them as joke. In fact, I think people are, by talking about you, giving it more spin than it deserves, because clearly, I mean, this is a joke. I've said before, and I've proven right, that in any election, there is no movement you would see around. There will be two parties contending for political office at the next general election: the National Democratic Congress and the New National Party. That I'm very clear. And therefore, the context is NDC versus NNP. That is the situation now. That will be the situation at the next general election. And I'm confident in that case, the NNP will emerge victorious.
Doc, that's all the time we have. But before we leave, sometimes I like to give you a word. So your word, if you say anything on it, is jab. That's the word of the day.
Well, the people play their job. Play their job, just be responsible and protect yourselves, because in the final analysis, your health is important to whatever you do. That's my advice going forward.
Okay, so thank you so much.
Play job, play job.
That's all the time we have for today, folks. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
Show them